Hello, here we are at the Wellesley Free Library. I'm Miss Lee, and it's time for more stories. The more we get together, the more we get together, the happier we'll be. For your friends are my friends, and my friends are your friends. Oh, the more we get together, the happier we'll be. Here is an old story. Once, there was an old man, an old woman, a little boy, a little girl, and a pet squirrel. And they all lived together in a log cabin in the woods. One day, the old woman went to the cupboard to see if she had some sody saleratus. That's baking soda, so that you can make the biscuits rise and be fluffy. Well, there was no sody saleratus. So she turned to the little boy and said, "Little boy, you go on down to the store and buy some sody saleratus." And so he went. And he went walking out the door and walking down the road and walking onto the bridge, walking down to the general store and bought the sody saleratus for a nickel. Then he turned around and started walking back to the bridge and started over the bridge when out from under the bridge was an old bear who said, "Who's that walking over my bridge?" "It's me, little boy." "Well, I'm gonna eat you up, you and your sody saleratus too." And he swallowed down that little boy, just like that. Back at home, the old woman was wondering and waiting. And so she turned to the little girl and said, "Little girl, go on down to the general store and find out what's keeping little boy." And so the little girl went stepping down the road, stepping onto the bridge, when out popped that crazy old bear and said, "Who's that stepping over my bridge?" "It's me, little girl." "Well, I ate up the little boy and his sody saleratus too, and by golly, I reckon I'm gonna eat up you." And he swallowed the little girl down, just like that. Then, back at the cabin, the old woman began wondering, what in the world? So she turned to old man and she said, "Go on down to the store and find out what's keeping those children." And so the old man trudged out the door and trudged down the road. He went trudging over that bridge when out popped that old bear who said, "Who's that trudging over my bridge?" "It's me, old man." "Well, I ate the little girl and I ate the little boy, him and his sody saleratus too, and by gummy, I reckon I'm gonna eat you too." And he swallowed the old man down, just like that. Back at the cabin, the old woman waited and was getting annoyed, and she said, "Well, I guess if you want to do something right, you have to do it yourself." And so she went hurrying out of the cabin, hurrying on the road, hurrying onto the bridge when out popped that old bear. "Who's that hurrying over my bridge?" "It's me, old woman." "Well, I ate up the old man, and I ate up the little girl, and I ate up the little boy, him and his sody saleratus too. And now, by cracky, I'm gonna eat up you." And he swallowed her down, just like that. Meanwhile, back at the cabin, that little pet squirrel was running all around, scampering here, scampering there, wondering, where are these foolish folks? They should be home by now, having made the biscuits so I could eat them, and I'm hungry. So the little squirrel skipped out of the door, went skipping down the road, went skipping onto the bridge, when out popped that old bear. And the old bear said, "Who's that skipping over my bridge?" "It's me, little squirrel." "Well, I ate up the old woman, I ate up the old man, I ate up the little girl, and I ate up the little boy and his sody saleratus too. And now, I know, by jingo, I'm going to eat up you." But the little squirrel jumped off the bridge, climbed up a tree. The old bear followed that squirrel by climbing up the tree. The little squirrel went higher and higher, and the bear went higher and higher. The little squirrel went higher and higher. The old bear went higher and higher. And then the little squirrel looked around and jumped over to another tree. The old bear looked over at the other tree, and he looked down at the ground. And then he said, "If that little squirrel can jump it with his little legs, I can jump it with my big legs too." And the bear jumped. And you know what happened to him? He landed splat on the ground and busted wide open. And out stepped the old woman, the old man, the little girl, the little boy, because the bear had swallowed them whole, don't you know? So the old woman said, "Where's my sody saleratus?" Little boy said, "Here 'tis." But before they went home, she took out a needle and some thread, and she sewed up that bear until he was almost like new. And then he stood up, and she said, "Old bear, you better not come back to these parts again. Never again do we want to see you." The old bear said, and then walked away. And he was never seen again in those woods. Now, they all went back to the cabin, and the old woman baked a big batch of light, fluffy biscuits. And they ate, and they ate, and they ate until they couldn't eat anymore. And the pet squirrel had most of the biscuits for himself. Most of the time, squirrels don't eat biscuits. They usually eat what? Nuts, acorns. Here's a song about acorns. I'm a little acorn brown, lying on the cold, cold ground. People come and step on me, that is why I'm cracked, you see. I'm a nut, I'm a nut, I'm a nut. Do it with me. I'm a little acorn brown, lying on the cold, cold ground. People come and step on me, that is why I'm cracked, you see. I'm a nut, I'm a nut, I'm a nut. Finders Keepers by Keiko Kaza. One day, a squirrel found a big acorn. "Yay, finders keepers," he cried. "I'm going to save this for later," thought the squirrel. So he dug a hole and buried it. Then he left his hat to mark the spot. "You stay put, hat," said the squirrel. "I'll be back tomorrow." But once the squirrel had gone, the wind began to blow. It lifted the hat higher and higher until it landed in a tree next to a little bird. "Wow, what a terrific nest!" cried the bird. "Finders keepers." She snuggled into her new nest, but soon it began to wobble. It wobbled and wobbled until it fell into a nearby stream. The hat quickly floated along until An ant spotted it. Yippee! What a nice boat, cried the ant. Finders keepers. The ant hopped on board and sailed on and on until... Splash! A big wave nearly turned the boat upside down. What was that? Cried the ant. It was a bear. Hey, look at this. What a perfect clown nose, cried the bear. Finders keepers. Wearing his handsome red nose, the bear juggled and juggled until his nose started to tickle. Achoo! The bear's nose went flying. It flew and flew until finally it landed near a flower patch. The next day the squirrel returned. There you are, he said to his hat, exactly where I left you. He dug up his acorn and happily munched away. Yummy. And that was the end of the story until someone else came along. What a cool hat, cried the snake. Finders keepers. Let's try this movement. Squirrel has a bushy tail. Shake that tail, shake that tail. Squirrel has a bushy tail. Shake that tail now. Raccoon has a dark black mask. Show that mask, show that mask. Raccoon has a dark black mask. Show that mask now. Elephant has a curly trunk. Move that trunk, move that trunk. Elephant has a curly trunk. Move that trunk now. Gator has a great big jaw. Snap that jaw, snap that jaw. Gator has a great big jaw. Snap that jaw now. Here's a book about some disappearing books. Where Are My Books? By Debbie Ridpath Owie. Spencer loved books. His favorite bedtime book was Night Night Narwhal. Sometimes he read it aloud. Every night Spencer put the book back where it belonged. That way he'd always be able to find it. Until one morning, where is my book? Spencer looked everywhere, but it was no use. Night Night Narwhal was gone. That evening, he chose Tenacious Todd. It was okay, but Todd was a toad, and toads were amphibians, and amphibian books were supposed to be for right after lunch story time. When Spencer woke the next morning, Tenacious Todd was gone. Every morning, another book was missing. Next to go was Send In the Clownfish. Then Beluga Beluga vanished. Sea Monkey and Bob went missing. Things were getting out of hand. Spencer vowed to find out what was going on. His father did not know what happened to Night Night Narwhal. Spencer's mother had no idea either, nor had she seen Tenacious Todd, Send In the Clownfish, Beluga Beluga, or any of Spencer's other missing books. That left only one person. Where are my books? It was time for a new plan. That night, Spencer set a trap with his copy of Space Frog Sam. The next morning, it was time for Spencer to get his books back. Where are my books? Spencer ran faster. The thief was just round the corner. Aha, he said, that's my book. Spencer didn't know squirrels liked to read. It gave him a great idea. Spencer told the squirrels they could borrow his books, but there would be rules. Just like at the library, they had to return the books they borrowed before they could borrow more. But they didn't need to leave anything behind. Spencer even helped them pick out their first book. He chose one for himself, too. And he promised to read it aloud. Night, night, narwhal. Here's a riddle. How can you catch a squirrel? By climbing up a tree and acting like a nut. Here's our goodbye song. See you later, alligator. In a while, crocodile. Give a hug, ladybug. Blow a kiss, jellyfish. See you soon, big baboon. Out the door, dinosaur. Take care, polar bear. Wave goodbye, butterfly. See you next time.